Hello there folks, welcome to Hour Broadway. This is episode 11, the 11th edition, the 11th incarnation of Hour Broadway, although it's only been 10 weeks. This week of course is the build up to Money in the Bank, and I don't think Raw was as bad as last week, but we'll get to that shortly anyway. Obviously you can follow us in all the usual places, Facebook, Twitter, the likes at Hour Broadway, and Max and myself will get on with the show. So we might as well just go through the payback card and talk about what happened in Raw this week. So starting things off is obviously the World Heavyweight title picture, and I liked what they'd done with it this week actually, if I'm quite honest. Instead of being the 20-minute promo at the start of the show and then the 20-minute segment at the end of the show, they sort of skipped that by just peppering wee bits throughout the show and then having the end segment, which I felt worked a lot better, considering it's two guys who sort of need to get a build-up that isn't just cliched and the same old stuff. Like John Cena, if he does the same thing again, it doesn't really make a difference because we're used to that. Randy Orton, we're used to it. But guys like Orton and Cena are already up on this plateau where these other guys are trying to get. So they need to do different things to try and get them there. And I thought the whole thing carried on for last week. Rollins not really being he's sick of being paranoid type thing. Like he's sick of relying on other people, so he's wanting to rely on himself. But the paranoia came back in this week. And then just the whole inclusion of Ambrose through Instagram throughout the show, I thought that was really well done, and it was something a bit different, especially since they've got rid of the app. It's another way to engage folk, just doing it through Instagram. But I thought that was a much more inventive way of building them up to the end of the show than 20-minute promo at the start with authority as per.
Well, one good thing about skipping the 20-minute promo was the fact that when it came to the main event, usually when they've had the 20-minute promo in various segments during the show, you're sick of them by then already. But the fact is, it came to the main event, you're like, oh, we've still got Seth Rollins to go. We've not really seen much of him about the show. We've maybe seen bits and bobs. And I just felt, regarding even the pacing of the show, it was a lot better. Really good idea putting over with Instagram. That also comes in with the whole promoting the fact they've got so many followers on the various forms of social media as well. So I think that's tied in with that as well. But as you say, with the app going as well, great way to integrate the likes of Instagram in and showing that it's not just Twitter and various other things. Just hoping using Instagram it goes a lot better than stuff like Tout and various other social media things.
The only downside of that, to jump in there, the only downside of that is the guy they've got doing all this is a guy that doesn't use Twitter, doesn't use anything. That was the only thing. But then again, maybe that played in better because they could do it through WWE's own Instagram account instead of relying on Dean Ambrose to do it himself, because obviously he's just not involved in that at all. I think he's maybe got one thing on Twitter and it's a retweet or something. But
well, the thing is as well, it'll be a lot more exposure coming for the WWE's rather than, Dean Ambrose. He's actually got Twitter. Obviously there won't be as much exposure on his Twitter account.
I think when he comes out, they still have his Twitter thing there, and it's like, why? He's got hundreds of thousands of followers and doesn't use it whatsoever.
That's another one I could compare it to is Luke Harper. Luke Harper's got one and doesn't use it at all, apart from obviously tweeted out something after the show. But that was like the first tweet ever. The only thing he's got is like a favourite to Colt Cabana when he was still Brody Lee ages ago. So it's in comparison to that. But regarding the main event scene, as you say, very, very refreshing. It's two guys that need something different to get over. The story still remains about, can Seth Rollins do it alone? And I think that story was told perfectly through the whole show, and especially with the main event. It's like, well, surely he's got to beat these two guys, and it just showed, like, even though he should be easily beating these guys, it wasn't an easy ride. I
think it's really well done as well. They're sort of playing into real life as well. There's a lot of stories being about, especially this week, in the past week. Rollins was talking in an article or tweeted a link to an article about how Joey Mercury basically saved his job because his ego was getting out of whack, and he just thought it was Billy Big Boss pretty much. And that's how they've portrayed the character on television, and I think that's been done really well. Building up to last week where he sort of went off the handle at Triple H and the rest of the authority. And then that parlayed into this week where the authority could just be like, oh, well, you said all this stuff last week, so are you going to back it up, or are you going to just come grovelling back to us? And then still had obviously him in their best interest. But well, you can pick your opponent. You just need a wee tune up coming up to the pay per view, and just use this opportunity to prove yourself to us again. And then the whole build up throughout the show it kind of reminded me of a couple of weeks ago or a month or two ago when the Kane, and it's kind of the same dynamic with Kane building up to Kane, sort of just having to be in charge, having to forget everything else he's done before and just prove himself. It was kind of like that same dynamic on television, with the segments building up to the main event. Although I think this was done much better. I liked the dynamic when we came to the face-off between J&J and Seth Rollins backstage. Again, just Jamie Noble winning mic time, absolutely shone. Thought that was absolutely brilliant. And then we got Joey Mercury actually speaking again.
Spoke very well in my opinion.
Aye, I just thought it was really well done. But again, it was so simple to build it up to, this is something that people are interested in watching. In reality, I'd fell asleep before any of this happened. But if they'd maybe started the show with authority, I would have still just been as uninterested as usual. But then again, that's just maybe critical of how WWE books the first hour of their shows anyway, as opposed to what the content actually is.
I will say this, one massive negative for me is it was a fantastic face turn in my opinion, to two what we can pretty much call non-wrestlers, because it's not anybody that's going to be a long-term investment. It's really just what you would call literally it's just a non-wrestler, because they're very they're occasionally just filling in as extra heels because they don't have it. But I thought if that was let's say an active member of the roster, that would have been an awesome face turn. Like, the crowd are really getting behind the two of them, especially in the match as well, in the main event. The crowd are really behind J&J. Two of them shows that, they might not have wrestled on television for a while, but the guys are so good at what they do. Made Rollins still look like a dominant threat, but at the same time we're getting like cool little sequences going and a little bit of build and all that. And I was just gutted these two guys are no longer, active competitors, because I thought both of them brought it very well last night.
The dynamic that I liked about it was, you're so used to WWE where it's usually babyface in peril for ages, and then they get their comeback. Comeback gets cut off, then they'll have their comeback again to get the win. But these are two guys that don't have a comeback because they're no active members of the roster. Obviously, back in the day, they'd have had something resembling a babyface comeback, although both of them were predominantly heels. But it was so intriguing seeing that babyface fire for two guys that have been heels for so long and don't have a recognised comeback or something that signals to the crowd that you start cheering us now. It was more what wrestling's supposed to be in the storytelling aspect. Told the story brilliantly. These are two guys that have been wrestlers in the past, never made it to the top, but still really good in the ring. Whereas Seth Rollins is a guy that is the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, so he was dealing with them quite easily. The only difficult aspect was that it was 2-on-1, and even at that, he was dealing with it quite handily, and it was just his own ego that got in his way in the match. That was pretty much it, and they told that story brilliantly. The other thing that I did quite like about it as well was just, it was quite obvious that Joey Mercury's helped Seth Rollins in the past, be it backstage or whatever. It's been made well known that he was pretty much the agent on all the Shield's matches while the Shield were on their run. But it looked more realistic, a lot of the stuff they were doing, and I thought that made Rollins come off much better than he's done in a while, and he's losing efforts because he's lost quite a lot of matches recently. And they sold the ending well, where I hate these things where it's like, make it the weakest looking roll up in the world. And the roll up looked great, but what sold it even more was Rollins lost because he's clutching onto the title. And if anything, that makes the title look even more important.
That's actually a great point you put out there. It's like trying to not lose this out of his grasp. This it's like, I've not had this title for ages for the last 2 weeks. This is my baby, and I'm not letting it go. But at the same time, I can't get my shoulders up because I'm grasping it, and that's obviously what's cost him in this match.
Brilliant. And I mean, as much as that's the whole show was really about Rollins, it's all revolving around about Ambrose. So it's always going to bring you back to Ambrose anyway. So it wasn't really something that was going to grab anybody, but I thought they told the story really well as opposed to the typical build-up to a ladder match.
What I like with Dean Ambrose is you always get your few comedy spots as well. Obviously, there was a few comedy angles with the Instagram and all that, but even when he was ringside at the match, and there's a bit where Rollins is fled outside the ring and he's just out next to where Ambrose is, and then Ambrose just dumps popcorn on him. That was amazing. Just a small wee thing, gets a wee pop for the crowd, but it just plays into the fact that Ambrose can play the serious nutter and can just do funny things as well.
The thing that I thought was even better was like it was only a wee drop, and it's like because he's obviously wanting to enjoy the popcorn that he's bought. Clearly, he doesn't want to just dump it all on Seth Rollins. It's just a wee bit to annoy him. I thought that's quite good. The only other thing is I thought they might have done the quite typical spot where it's usually with water, but where they spat the juice in his face. I thought they were maybe going to do that spot, but they never done that. But then again, through all the Instagram stuff, it was so funny and so obvious that the pink saxophone was references to Seth Rollins' dick pic a few months ago. So funny though, but so obvious. And then they back up by having a picture of Dean Ambrose playing it's not really playing it was an inflatable one, but a pink saxophone. So they got away with it, and I just thought it was so funny. But I think the biggest thing out of all this is it's clearly all about Seth Rollins. And as much as you'd love it to be a launching pad for Ambrose, it doesn't feel like that in the slightest. It feels like it's all geared towards Seth Rollins, building Seth Rollins up again. I don't think he'll be turning babyface, but it's when they move towards the centre of the spectrum that when they shoot back out to being a heel again, that can revitalise them as opposed to where he wasn't really getting stagnant, but everybody else around about him was making it stagnant, making it quite boring week on week, the same thing. Again, expecting J&J to interfere, Kane to interfere. So it's freshened that up for that perspective, and I think that'll make it better when he inevitably does realign with the authority back to the level that he was, and maybe be the dominant heel as opposed to the chicken shit heel relying on everybody.
Well, what it does is it gives him a chance, which we've not really seen so far in his heel run. He's just a solo heel run, essentially. No help, just him on his own. And as you say, when he realigns with authority, he'll be back to a whole new level. And then I think we can accept when he does realign with authority, that face turn is coming not long after it, and it's going to be massive. But we can obviously make small complaints about Dean Ambrose and say, oh, he's not going to win the title. This was a guy, a month ago, we were saying, this guy's stuck in a mid-card, he's got nothing going for him. I mean, what's next for him? And just shows you within a month he's not quite the main guy, but he's up there.
And that's the thing, it's not like his crowd support's diminished in that time. So
if anything, it's increased.
The only thing that I feel out of this is I thought it was quite obvious for a while off that it was going to be Dean Ambrose getting the Money in the Bank, and that Roman Reigns would just be getting the push and just earning a shot at the title as opposed to doing it through the Money in the Bank. It doesn't really seem like that now. But the other side of this as well, going back to Seth Rollins being strong, because if, as it's been suggested, that Lesnar will be back for the next pay-per-view in 18th of July.
19th
of July, Battleground. I think the best bet for you creatively getting into that is a strong individual Seth Rollins as your champion against Brock Lesnar, as opposed to the weaselly Seth Rollins that we've had for months. So if that's the way they're going to build into that storyline, more than happy with it. Just hope that they don't have Ambrose having his chance, losing, and then just falling into nowhere. But again, the build up to the match, couldn't have really asked for any more, to be honest. Especially with the whole angle they went with Ambrose taking what he thinks is rightfully his.
What you said as well as before we came on the air is the fact that it's a ladder match. Actually, at times I forgot it's a ladder match, apart from the small wee references at the end of the show where Dean Ambrose is climbing the ladder. So it's going to be interesting to see how the two of them go. I don't think they wouldn't have had any sort of ladder matches as single competitors, would they? Apart from Money in the Banks or that. I'm trying to think, they've had a few gimmick matches together, but I don't think any's ever been a...
Well, obviously they've had like TLC matches and stuff in WWE, but honestly couldn't tell you. But I mean, obviously they looked impressive in their TLC outings, and obviously Ambrose was in the ladder match at WrestleMania and stuff like that, but a 1-on-1 ladder match is a different thing, but they've not had anything like that, I can't recall. So also it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. I think if they can keep the interference to a minimum, that'll help the match. Although it seems like we'll get a spot where the Authority come down but don't interfere, and then you just get Ambrose doing the big elbow drop on a big pile of folk as per usual.
Imagine with the clean finish between these two. I think we've had one since probably FCW, but you know what I mean? The shenanigans at the end of the one at Elimination Chamber. I don't even want to speak about Hell in a Cell because that was such a bad ending. But hopefully, it's a clean finish. I really doubt it will be. But it would be nice to see something like, I don't know, a tug of war on top of the ladder, and then one guy pushes the other, and maybe Rollins gets a bit lucky in that aspect. And
that's the thing, see if it does come down to something like that, I think that's better than... No better than a definitive finish, like some guy's down and somebody climbs the ladder. But because I just hate the image of a guy being that hurt that he can't get to the ladder at all. And I'd prefer it was a tussle at the top of the ladder and then somebody just manages to get the title. Because it makes... If Rollins wins it, it makes Ambrose look like he's no that far off of Rollins. Far off of Rollins, even. And if Ambrose won it, it'd do the same as well. But whichever way it goes, it puts them both up on pretty much the same level as each other. And Rollins is on a pretty high level at this point. He's essentially their top heel. So if that's where you're going to try and position Ambrose opposite him there, that's only good for Ambrose. Obviously, it just depends how both of them are booked afterwards. But they're setting them up to be in a good place post Money in the Bank. But in saying that, I think both of you think Rollins will win.
I definitely do think Seth's going to win, as I say, unless there's shenanigans via Money in the Bank winner. But taking that aside, if I had to just go and predict without any shenanigans like that, I'd say Seth gets the win again to continue his title run.
Definitely. Yeah, moving on. It's quite interesting. We spoke there about how throughout the show they built up to the main event. Kind of similar to something they'd done in the past with Kane throughout the show about a month and a half ago. Well, this show, they basically just repeated the setup from Raw 2 weeks ago. And instead of it being about the tag titles, it was about Money in the Bank match. So we had 3 matches, 3 Money in the Bank, 3 matches with Money in the Bank competitors throughout the show. A promo segment about Money in the Bank. And I felt it was alright, all in. But I'm not really that excited because it seems too similar to the build to Royal Rumble. It seems too obvious that Roman Reigns is going to win. Even down to like being able to predict that Kane was going to put himself in the match. Things like that. It seems all too predictable. And I mean, what is this like? We must be in double figures with Money in the Bank matches now, or close to it. If somebody like Kane's been in 6.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's been a couple of years you've had 2.
So it's...
You're talking about started in 2005?
I just mean for like the World Heavyweight, the main title.
Oh, right.
Obviously there's been 2, but I mean, it's too much when you look down the list, because that's the way they've been talking about it. It's like how many times, so Kane, like fair enough, I think he's like half and half for whatever title he went for. But these are guys now that have, when you're looking at it that way, have been in the realm of the title picture so many times. Kofi Kingston's been in the realm of the WWE title 5 times just through Money in the Bank, and not including his feud with Randy Orton back in the day, right? So these guys have been in that frame and never got anywhere near it. That's not a great story to be telling with people, like, and that's the biggest downside of the Money in the Bank concept. I think that's why I liked 2 years ago when they had it all former champions. That seems more realistic, and because I hate this whole thing of, oh, but so and so only get their chance to win the Royal Rumble, and it's like, no, they worked their arse off to get that chance. Money in the Bank seems a bit more like it's just thrown about. The fact that somebody like Ken Kennedy won it, it seems like it's held in a higher esteem than it should be. Mostly just because of the success rate of people that win the match.
Even Damien Sandow as well, he wasn't exactly said he was going to be. He wasn't exactly upper mid-card at that time. I think he was still kind of mid-card-ish.
Daniel Bryan won it and he was distinctly mid-card at the time.
God, even when he was holding Money in the Bank, you could see he was lower mid-card. He was on like Saturday Morning Slam and stuff like that.
But no, that's again, with there being only one main title, then it sort of makes something like this more important, I suppose. But I feel like it's too obvious. It seems like it's been too obvious most years. And that's sort of a diminished my interest in it. And saying that, I think the talent that's in it is great, a great selection. And as much as people might hate that somebody like Kane, Kane's great in matches like these. He's the kind of guy that you need that can be dominant at spots in the match, but he's also great there to help there be spots.
And to be safe and to make sure every spot, as you say, is executed
And
perfectly without hurting somebody.
he's the kind of guy that's there in the match, and he'll be able to control the flow of the match, control where the match is going, and that's better for the match. It also makes storyline sense for him to be there as well. But I mean, it's just when they've got a Raw way. So it must have been the 3 matches with the competitors. So you'd Orton against Sheamus, Kofi against Reigns, and whichever the other match was.
Ziggler and Kane?
Ziggler and Kane, of course. So you do 3 matches. Nothing really. But as we said last week, might as well just skip Orton and Sheamus. Seen it that many times, and it's such an uninteresting match for two guys that I think are really good. They don't put on a good match. It's not exciting. It doesn't engage anybody, and that's what a match is supposed to be. Kane and Ziggler was really just to tell the story. Lana and Rusev, we'll get to that. Kofi and Reigns was the best of a bad bunch, I suppose. Kofi looked alright, but then you've got Reigns winning with, albeit impressive looking, Superman punch. It's his secondary move. It's not his main finishing move. It's not his recognised finishing. It's not his recognised end to a match. So that sort of, I felt like the crowd cheered for it, but like they weren't ready. They're obviously expecting the spear. But I just felt as if it was, as opposed to with the tag teams 2 weeks ago, like that was guys getting a chance that you weren't used to seeing getting a chance. Whereas this week it was just, we've seen all these guys wrestle before. There's nothing new and interesting about it.
This is guys getting a chance, that have had a chance, and have not really took that chance, or never really had a chance to make the most of the chance, if they can keep using the chance.
Exactly. And it's the fact that it's going to be the Money in the Bank debut of 2 guys, and Kevin Owens and Neville. And not Kevin Owens as a match, sorry, but Roman Reigns and Neville, right? So you've got so much focus on Reigns in his first Money in the Bank match, and then you've got Neville fighting Kevin Owens for the NXT Championship while he's in a guy in the Money in the Bank ladder match. I understand why that happened in the show, but it just seems like they're totally caught in 2 minds of what they should actually be doing with Neville, and he only gets a passing mention in Kane's promo for the match.
If I go all the way back to the start then, talking about people being predictable and stuff like that, obviously looking at who I thought was going to win the Money in the Bank match, looking at who I think's going to win. Like yourself, I think, surely it's not going to be Roman Reigns. It's too obvious it's going to be Roman Reigns, but then again, the Royal Rumble it's too obvious it's going to be Roman Reigns, and Roman won. But like, I look at Roman Reigns and I think to myself, he doesn't need it. You know, I think the way they've been building him up, naturally just give him a title shot and you believe he'd win. I mean, I think, although you kind of disagree a little bit, like giving it to folk that have kind of been in the picture before, it's like, I see Money in the Bank as a chance to either launch a star or relaunch a career. You know, not saying, I don't think Randy should get it because he's had the title pretty recently, but there's no reason why Sheamus can't. They need a heel. They need a heel that's threatening, that could easily go between upper mid card and the main event, and Sheamus is that guy. People want to boo him. He's got a small bit of momentum going with him, you know, because he just looks like a bit of a badass. And let's be honest, he's probably the number 3 heel at the moment on the active roster. I look at everybody else. Kofi, not right now. I think what he's got at the moment is going to help him even more, sticking with the New Day. Although the interesting thing when they said the New Day would all be Money in the Bank winners was interesting. But I think it's far too soon with that. Ziggler, I like Dolph, but he's another one. I think his time's been, and I just don't think he has it on the mic to be a main event talent. I think in the ring, phenomenal, but I just think upper mid card's pretty much his peak.
I just don't think he gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a phrase that gets passed about where it seems to be like kind of sort of an insider to outsider term, like, oh, so-and-so gets it, they get the business, whatever. He just doesn't get the mic work. Like, it's quite an interesting dynamic because he's obviously a great talker. He talks, he's great when he's in interviews and stuff like that, but he doesn't seem like he understands the promo. Like, he used to always do that thing with his cadence, and he'd go and go and go and he'd talk. because I'm the show off. Like that's how his promos would go, and it
just talk very fast. Now we got follow that.
Exactly, just like
you're like, and the crowd doesn't get a chance to digest what he's just said. It's like, what? Because he's speaking that fast. But looking at that again, so that's why I don't think Dolph will get it. Kane, it would make sense, kind of in a storyline perspective, but no, we don't want that in 2015.
I would be fine with Kane winning it if he doesn't win the title. If, like, say Ambrose does win the match, then Kane comes down to cash in and fails. That's brilliant. That's great. I prefer that than probably 6 or 7 other alternatives. But it's not the one that I really want to happen.
There's another one then, right? Rollins retains it. Kane wins Money in the Bank. Kane goes to cash in the same night. But Rollins beats him. So after all this saying, oh, you're not the best guy, in the authority, you're not good enough, you can't do it on your own, and then he just beats Kane, again, Kane has to go. I guess it's a short-term story. It's like, oh, you proved me right, and then he can maybe move on the feud and all that, but you can see where it makes a wee bit of sense. Well,
that's the thing as well. Somewhat like it's almost like the similar thing as it would do if they did it to Ambrose. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that's great. You do that, then the night after, on Raw, you just open away Rollins, and he can be back to having this massive ego and how, like, I retained my title, then I beat Kane, despite him having Money in the Bank. And then Brock Lesnar comes out. That's brilliant. You build it up and then just take him all the way back down again. And I mean, again, that still seems too short term. But for what you're hearing is that's how they want to book the show, is short term. 2 weeks, 4 weeks, that's how they want to book it. So that seems more realistic. The other thing as well, it'll be a 6 week build to Battleground, am I right?
Pretty much 5-6 weeks.
5 or 6 weeks, right? So does that mean that we're going to have another thing on the network before then? Or is this just because of Tough Enough that it's been done this way?
Well, the way I can think about it when you say that they're either going to, as you say, do it for Tough Enough, or there'll be a small build for this Japan card that's going to be on the network. But
possibly. It just seems like having so many events in a short space of time and then all of a sudden a 5 week build to an event, this seems a bit off kilter. But again, they've got Tough Enough coming up. They've got that Japan card that they're going to be showing on the network. So who knows?
Just a final thing, obviously, on the competitors. Again, Neville's our guy that's in the match. I don't see him ever being a world champion in WWE now. I really don't. Especially the promo at the start. If I'm struggling to make out what he's saying, whatever the American audience and the worldwide audience got with that accent.
I thought it was clear as day, to be quite honest.
I still struggled.
I'm alright with accents, so they don't really bother me. But I thought he did really well to try and pronounce it. The thing that I think gets in his way is because he wears the fake teeth. And sometimes he gets a bit... It's no slurred, it's just a bit... There's something... I can't get the words together for it, but there's just something about the way he speaks when he's got those his teeth in. Just seems a bit unnatural. It's just, especially when you're obviously having to force yourself to talk properly. When you're ready, like when your natural cadence is calling folk pet and just getting back to your not natural way of talking. But that's something that would hold him back. But then again, plenty of guys have got to the top without mic skills. I mean, Undertaker's, like, regarded as one of the greatest of all time, doesn't do a great promo.
He was almost so vignettes and stuff, to be honest. And a lot of the early days was Paul Bearer.
Exactly. People really forget that. Like, oh no, you need to be good in the mic, and it's like Undertaker wasn't good in the mic. And then even when it was like when he came back as the American Badass, didn't he get great promos either. Just sort of like this thing you're talking about, like you wanting Roman Reigns to be a badass. That's all the Undertaker did on the mic. Like, fair enough, during the Ministry era and all that, it was like talking with that daft low voice, but his promos weren't great. It was great because it bounced off of Stone Cold, or it bounced off of Vince McMahon, or somebody that was great when they were talking on the microphone. And sometimes people forget that aspect of it, that when your character's so strong, you don't need to be great in the mic.
It's when you mention that, actually, like, not even just the American Badass, but you could see a lot of Big Evil bounced off of Paul Heyman. So again, that's somebody very strong on the microphone. One other thing that disappointed with the event, obviously when it got initially announced, and they announced the 6 to start with, and they said there'll be more people added to this. So like we got Kane, I'm like, okay, who else? We never got anybody else. So as if that was just gonna I was just gonna give you Kane and just that's it. I mean, there's so many other guys that could have easily went in this match just as an opportunity.
R-Truth should have been in it, to be quite honest.
Yep.
I mean, you work so hard to overcome your fear of ladders, and then they don't even reward you with putting you in the Money in the Bank match. That's scandalous.
Right. Somebody else who I think I don't even know why I'd put him as a winner, but I just think it's somebody that maybe not great in the ring, but just on the mic could easily get right back into that main event scene is The Miz. Easily in the mic could get himself back in that main event scene. You put him back in a Money in the Bank match, flukes a victory like he did the first time over a couple of bigger names, and there you go, you've got another heel for the main event.
And that's what they need. They need heels up there. It's that way, like, they've got so much talent that's very much the same. They've all got potential and they've all got abilities they could be using, but they're just sitting doing nothing. Like, right, oh, Bad News Barrett. Right, we don't want you doing the bad news stuff, so we'll make you King Barrett, and then do nothing with you. It's like, what's the point? Fair enough, there might be concerns about his health because he's had 2 major injuries since he's been in the company. But come on, fair enough. One of them was sort of in a match where all you're doing is catching somebody. Another one, you're getting flung off something, so there's nothing you can do about that. It's 2 freak injuries, really. It's not like he's... Fair enough, that's been injury prone, I suppose. But it's not because it's something that you've done. I feel he's not getting a fair shake of the stick, to be quite honest. Especially considering he's got the size. He's looking the best he's ever looked. He's not the greatest in the ring, but he's got a style that he can work against anybody else. And he's believable. That's the biggest thing of all. And that's something that they struggle on the heel side quite often, is to have believable guys. But no, he's in a pre-show match against R-Truth.
I mean, it's all good giving us all these baby faces that we want to get behind and support, but we need these really good heels so that then when the baby face defeats them, you know what I mean, when they get the upper hand, then that makes us want to cheer and go for the baby face a bit more. I think that could be a reason why maybe Roman Reigns isn't quite at the level WWE wants him to be, because there isn't any fodder for him to go over. There isn't anybody like Rock had Austin, Hogan had Piper, Andre, Macho Man, whatever. There was still somebody on that same spectrum that was there to go over. And I just feel with Roman Reigns, like they're trying to make it Seth Rollins, but at the same time, Seth Rollins isn't really over at this point. And at the same time, they're trying to get Ambrose over him as well.
I think that's partly why they're trying to separate Rollins from the Authority as well, just to get so that Rollins gets the heat on his own as opposed to being attached to the Authority. But I mean, it's that classic phrase, iron sharpens iron. So if you don't have an equal to go up against, how are you supposed to improve? If you don't have somebody better than you to go up against, you're never going to improve. If everybody's already below you, there's no way that you can go any higher. And that seems to be quite the issue with this match, because it's like everybody's on one level and then Roman Reigns is up above everybody else with the competitors of the match. And that's why it just seems so obvious that he's going to win it.
It's quite interesting to say that there's nobody that can get elevated when in a different title picture. Just a small shout to that is the guy's quite high up, but it's helping people get nearer his level. It's not obviously elevating them higher, but it's bringing people up from that level. And it's just a shame that's not happening in the main event scene.
Exactly. You understand why they've done what they've done with John Cena, but it's left the main event too weak, and a lot of people just aren't willing to accept that. Like, the fans are already burnt out by the time Cena's came and gone during a show. They're definitely burnt out by the last 20 minutes of a show. So if you can't invest them in that, don't use that time to build folk up. That's why for months and months and months, Roman Reigns comes out at the top of the second hour. So the crowd's only sat through whatever dark matches and pre-tapes there's been, and then the first hour of Raw. So the crowd's maybe only been sitting there for 2.5 hours, if even that. So they're still fresh. And Roman Reigns comes out and it's like, yes, this is the good guy we want to cheer. So we cheer him and it's loud. But now they're doing it at the end of the show and it's like, no, it's probably even half the reaction that they would be getting. But then again, the crowd did pop for Ambrose this week, so...
I think that's one thing we're forgetting. It's like we sometimes go 3 hours. How can people sit through that? And then you're like, the people at the show have got the 3 hours. They've got the various bits of the show where everything just goes dark during, obviously, the ad breaks. Well, I think it still goes like that. It was like the taping I went to. And before that, you've got your dark matches. You've got them saying the show will start in 10 minutes. You've got superstars getting taped. It's just, you forget how long they've been there. And they've probably been there an hour before the show starts, before that as well.
Queuing outside as well, waiting to get in.
So by the time, as you say, these main guys get there, they're drained. They just want to go home.
That's a real epidemic way. Anyway, I'm not wanting to be negative about this, just that I think it's been too obvious in the build up that it's going to be Reigns. If it's not, I'll be surprised about it. And depending who they go with, if it's not Reigns, it could be good. I still think that Reigns is the most obvious and probably is the best choice, regardless what happens with that.
I've still got another couple of theories if you're willing to listen to them. Right, we'll go with it. What could happen? Again, I'm going with my Sheamus pick. If Sheamus does win it, Seth Rollins continues to be a heel but becomes a solo heel away from the Authority. The Authority needs a new guy to represent them. Why not an Irish arse kicker? Why not Sheamus? Align him back up with Triple H, and then it's somebody that's a bit more believable.
Align him with that strong Irish McMahon name.
Mm-hmm. No, but him, and obviously he's a former workout buddy, Triple H.
Allegedly.
But no, I just think...
you work out with Triple H twice and that's your best pals. I think that's what he said in Jericho's podcast, something like that.
Oh, it was hilarious. But I just think it's... Like, Reigns, I just don't feel he needs Money in the Bank. That's just my way about it. I think if if Roman doesn't win the title to WrestleMania, I think, honestly, if they keep going the way he's going with him, let him win it at Mania, give him the WrestleMania moment. It means the fans will certainly not boo him. I mean, I don't know how he would work, how he gets into the WrestleMania main event without winning the Rumble, which could be a bit of a problem, but all depends what the Rumble is. But
well, again, we spoke about that last week as well. In fact, for several weeks, like, the WWE title won't be the main event, so it doesn't really matter. Why not just shake it up and go, one of the Rumble faces Undertaker, do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably as big a prize as anything else. Obviously, that's ridiculous, but still.
But I just feel that Roman doesn't need Money in the Bank. I just feel he's over enough now where he could naturally win it and you 100% believe it, and I believe he'd get the crowd reaction favourable towards him. I don't think it should be anytime soon. If it is going to be Roman Reigns in the way WWE want him to go, it's got to be either SummerSlam or WrestleMania. I don't count Survivor Series as a big event anymore. It's lost all its prestige. But you have him winning one of them or have him winning the network exclusive just to try and get that a bit of an increase in viewership. But that's why I'd go with a surprise option, bring somebody up that's either been in the scene before or just to help get another heel that Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose can overcome.
But what if Reigns does win it though?
Hopefully if he wins it then it's cashed in pretty quickly, because I think we the last couple of Money in it, well, especially the last one with Seth Rollins, held it for a long time. I don't think they can go with that again. I don't think whoever wins it will keep it very long. I think they'll either fail or succeed very quickly. That's how there's been a lot of talk, will cash in whoever wins on the night, and I firmly believe it'll either be within the night or definitely before SummerSlam or at SummerSlam. Aye,
that's totally agree with that. Mentioned before we started recording there about bookies have put their odds up, and the bookies seem to have an idea of what's going to happen at Money in the Bank.
Yeah, if you give me 2 seconds, I'll just get the odds up for the full market for the Money in the Bank ladder match. That's the ladder match, that's the wrong one. And the bookies are actually going with Roman Reigns, who was 1-2 on, is now 72 on. We've got Dolph Ziggler in his second favourite, 5-1. I actually looked up these during the event and they've actually drifted and moved a bit since then, so I'll compare them to when they were during Raw, during as the segment was taking place. Kofi's had a bit of a drop as well. He was roughly about, I think he was 12s and he's down to 7s. Randy Orton was down at 41. He was second favourite. He's now 71 with the bookies. Neville was sitting at 6-1 for some bizarre reason. I didn't quite know why, but he's now at 12s.
Because gravity's forgotten him. So.
Yep. And Sheamus is a bit of a mover as well. He was 8-1, 9-1, depending on where you were betting, but now he's sitting round about one place has went out to 12s, one place has went into 7s. So it's as if they don't really know where they're going to go with Sheamus, but I think most are pretty convinced it's going to be Roman Reigns. They've got the favourite. We do have Kane, but he's
massive outside.
Rank outsider.
But nah, I mean, like, it's very rare that the bookies get it wrong. And I mean, the bookies only realise what's happening once the insiders find out the results, and then they start lumping the money on. That's when they find out what's happening. But that's not the only theory they've got, is it?
No, they also have, especially Paddy Power, have got two special markets. They have will the Money in the Bank be cashed in on the night? They are going for it won't be 1 to 10 that it won't be, 5 to 1 that we do see a cash in on the night. And if you like a massive swerve, you can have a Roman Reigns heel turn by Dean Ambrose first winning the title and then Roman Reigns cashing in on Dean Ambrose. You can get that at 15 to 2. These odds we're live at 9 o'clock on Tuesday. They may change before the event starts.
I'm back to the studio. No, that's always like, I think that's something that is quite interesting as well. Like, because obviously it's not like the bookies actually know, but it shows you that what people are putting money on. And it's quite obvious that they think Reigns will win.
Very, very disappointed that Sheamus is drifting out. I was hoping he'd start to drift in a wee bit.
Anyway, moving on, we'll get to the next match in the card, which is the Intercontinental title match. Now, in stark contrast to the build-up to the Money in the Bank match, I thought the one segment about the Intercontinental title was probably the best segment in the show. Just, I mean, when last week we had, Miz in a title match, like, oh well, are they gone with this straight away? When we get the Big Show and you're like, oh Christ, Big Show again. And then this week totally turned it on its head. Just great promo work for the all three guys. Ryback just... No, and it's the opposite of Ziggler, whereas Ziggler's problem seems to be just trying to be too cool. He's trying to be like the cool promo. And Ryback's just being dead blatant about it. He's like, I've got a message and I've got a chant. So I'm just going to get into it with the crowd every week. And this was the most into it he's been, directing the crowd to chant things, asking them for answers. Thought he was brilliant. And he played along with the Miz absolutely brilliantly for the 5 or 6 minutes that they went themselves.
As I said just there, you put anything with the Miz at the moment and it just seems to elevate it. You know, last week everybody's like, Ryback versus the Big Show. After that segment in MITB, people are like, quite looking forward to this. You know what I mean? It was a great way of getting Ryback's character over. I think it's pretty much just a play on how he is in real life. You know, it's like the big guys talking and all that. It's great. He's been funny, but he's been cocky and arrogant at the same time. But the crowd are loving it. As you say, great chant that the fans are really getting behind. I thought Big Show was pretty solid as well on the mic. You know, he's saying, I'll take what's mine and all that. You know what I mean? I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, I'm dominating enough. And the Miz just, I think the way he handles a crowd is just fantastic. You know, like when my hand goes up,
your mouth goes shut.
Your mouth goes shut. You know, I'm talking. I think that's just fantastic.
It's as close to like pantomime wrestling, and I love that. Like, I remember, like, it's not like it's ridiculous me trying to talk about World of Sport. It's not like I was even born when World of Sport was on the telly. But they used to always show reruns. I've definitely, when I was younger, sat with my gran and seen reruns on the telly because she loved it back in the day. And it's that whole thing of, and we've even seen it in person, the heel has been such a villain, he's been so pantomime that you've got the old woman in the front row trying to hit him with a handbag, right? That's what I think. Miz, he's not quite there, but he's like WWE's equivalent of that type of villain. He's so up his own arse, and just everything he does is antagonising the crowd. It's insane to think that like a year ago he turned face. You know what I mean? It's just it's just a shame that people shit on him so much, and that he doesn't seem to get an opportunity to get back to the main event where he was 3 or 4 years ago.
I think the big problem with the Miz is, and we discussed this actually last week, is he's got sometimes too many out the ring commitments. You know, it's like, you try to invest in him. Needs to go for a movie, or needs to go for some sort of television appearance, or just other kind of things.
Or his fantasy football radio show. Or...
You know, it's just things like that, you know. I mean, the guy, we all know, isn't the greatest in the ring. He has main evented a WrestleMania. A lot of folk go, really? really, to quote them as. But I think definitely if he's there for a long period of time with no movies and they invest in him, I mean, there's no reason why with his mic skills that he can't get close to where he is. I think especially a Money in the Bank briefcase would have helped, but I think we'll probably be looking at him more so now in the IC scene, and hopefully with him being there can help elevate others as well. The likes of, I think he's helped Ryback in just those 2 segments as well, and getting the fans even more behind the big guy.
Definitely, and the whole dynamic where he done the whole thing, like my hand goes up, your mouth goes shut, and Ryback's like, my hand goes up, shout feed me more, and the crowd's doing it, and then sort of throws some jabs at them as about like, oh, we know everything about you always tell us, blah blah blah, and it's like, we're just bored of you, whatever they're saying, and then getting the crowd involved and asking the crowd, and it's like, what was that? And getting the crowd to chant louder, and then he dropped the line that I loved the most out of, was like, well, you get in the ring with me, I'll take years off your career, and laughing about it, like just a wee jibe there, like CM Punk and folk like that. It's absolutely brilliant, just a nice wee line to throw in there, and it's brilliant how he can go between being so confident that he comes off a bit cocky and arrogant, but then can just flip the switch and when Big Show gets involved. And it's like, I like that whole story, like Miz is trying to get the two of them to fight each other because the Miz is afraid of Big Show, and underlying is obviously afraid of Ryback, and then Ryback can just flip the switch and it's like, the difference is I'm not afraid of you. And then Big Show's just selling it so well by being so casual about everything because he's a giant. The only thing there's 2 things I didn't like. One of them only just popped into my head, but these are 2 guys that were touted as favourites for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at Mania, and neither of them have mentioned it. Specifically Big Show. That's the truth that he can drop on Ryback. And that is saying many times, like, the greatest villains, the greatest heels, greatest bad guys in history, wrestling, and any cultural event, and even like folk like the Gallagher brothers and all that, who are in music, but they get in, they influence people with their characters, and people get interested in them in the media because they're arseholes, but the stuff they say is true. So that's a prime opportunity for Big Show to throw a truth bomb, and there's nobody to be seen it, and it also builds up that along with it. If you're going to have a trophy awarded for a match at Mania, and then no mention it for the next 11 months, what's the point? I
don't know if he done it when he came out to the ring on Raw, but he definitely done it on the house show on Sunday because they had a Snapchat about it. That's the reason I know. But when he comes out to the ring and he was on the top of the ramp, he still done the pose, like the Andre the Giant pose. I don't know if he'd done that coming down to the ring on Raw, but even wee things like that, you know, if you've dropped that as well, it's like you've got all that, as you say, this to work with, and it makes you think, was the reason Big Show won that to help Roman Reigns and not actually help the prestige of that and help the Big Show help others?
It seems likely, doesn't it? Then the only other negative for me this whole segment was the shell shock on Big Show.
You didn't like it?
I did like it, but I'd have liked it even more if it was at the pay-per-view and we hadn't seen it on Raw already.
That's fair.
That's like, it's like the whole dynamic, right? Even let's throw a TNA thing in here, right? They did it the opposite side of being like no perfect where they did, alright, Dixie Carter's going to get put through a table with Bubba Ray Dudley or Billy Ray or whatever name he's going to be this week. But then it's like months and months and months before it happens. That's too long. This is the opposite. Like, I think he's probably shell shocked him before, but that's so far in the past that people are going to be like, how's he going to lift this guy? He's massive. And it's like, oh, that's how he's going to lift him after 2 weeks, dead easily. He's just got to shell shock him like it's nothing. I didn't like it for that point of view.
No, that's fair when you put it that way. Yep, the amazing feat of strength's good on Raw. But then when it comes to the pay-per-view, instead of going, can he do it, and it's just a case of,
let's just wait for it.
Because then, again, there's your story for the whole match, you know. You want to tell a story, can he lift him? And obviously you can use that as a story now, and it's going to be a big dominating giant. Can Ryback hit it?
But that's how long's that been? It's nearly an hour and it's the first drop here, but that's WWE logic for you. I mean, every single time Cena's in a match with Big Show or somebody like that, it's like, oh, what a feat of strength that he's done hundreds of times. Like, they still hype it up as if it's a big deal, because it is impressive, but it's not impressive when you've seen it a couple of days beforehand. And again, it's happening so regularly that they clearly don't care about things like that. And I mean, it's just such a ridiculous thing. If you want to get your storylines over, then every single part needs to be meticulously planned out about it. I'm not saying that you plan everything in advance of that, but when they're sitting there booking that segment, then someone goes, right, and then Ryback looks strong because he'll shell shock Big Show. Somebody should be going, but is that... Well, this is us just assuming, obviously, that Ryback's got to retain the title. Clearly too early to take it off him. So, if they know that, and they know that the match is going to finish by him shell shocking Big Show, because I'd hate for this to go more than a pay-per-view. I'd rather see him drop him down and then feud me the Miz after this. Then somebody should be going, but that's the finish to the pay-per-view match. And then somebody else can go, right, well, he's another angle. Just have him clothesline Big Show over the top rope. What's wrong with that?
My only concern is they possibly add something on SmackDown that nobody watches. And we maybe even end up... There's a lot of rumours of the triple threat match. Maybe that comes on SmackDown. And again, it could be a case they announce it on Thursday or whatever, or they announce it through the spoilers, and it comes to Sunday and people are like, oh, the Miz is in this match too, and I never knew that. But it's something you could see happening. But again, it's just WWE, you know. Most of the time they should have the event set up by the Raw. But,
definitely.
They'll always throw in a curveball in the SmackDown.
Anyway, despite the negatives at the end there, that's the match I'm looking forward to the most. Not for what it will be, but just from what the build's been. I'm the most interested in it. And again, I think it'll probably surprise folk just as much as the Bray Wyatt match where Ryback did at the last event. So move on to the other secondary title, I suppose. Even though it's not being defended, which I find hilarious when your whole thing's making the title look strong in consecutive events where it's not being defended. Just strange, I think, despite the context of the match that's involved in. But if John Cena's whole thing's this open challenge, surely he'd be just standing up and going, well, it's on the line, as opposed to, let's just fight again then. It seems, I just feel as if they've missed something here. I mean, is it because putting title versus title seems too obvious? Because John Cena's not going to win the NXT Championship. Or is he? Would he? I don't know. That'd be interesting.
Certainly draw people to watch NXT.
Exactly. And I mean, they do want to sell the network after all. But I don't think they would do that anyway. It just seems too obvious again that it's like, oh well, Kevin Owens is going to win because Cena has literally nothing at stake. That's what the promos have been about, how Cena wins for all these people. He wins for the people that chant for him. He even wins for the people that chant against him and all that. Because he literally has nothing at stake in this match. And if he's got nothing at stake, why do you care?
What they could have done is, like, obviously Owens won the first champions versus champions match. Should make him number one contender. So maybe make that the reason why the US title was on the line. And maybe I don't know how you'd book the match from there, but at least put something at stake instead of, you beat me. You're still saying very nasty things about me and my fans. I want to fight you again. That's literally how it's coming across.
It seems very similar to the feud with Rusev in that respect, where it's just like, right, that actually had something meaningful in it, had the US title. So it seems like that with nothing at stake at this point. And obviously I'm just being pernickety because an NXT guy like Kevin Owens against John Cena is a big deal. Even if it's a second match, it's still a big deal. But the two of them are standing there with titles and not putting them on the line. It doesn't make sense. It's just, that's the one thing that really grounded me about it this week. Just Cena's mantra for weeks is like, fighting champion, defend it every week, blah blah blah, accept all comers. But after last week he's saying you're ready to put a title on Kevin Owens because he beat you before he talked some trash. You've not even mentioned defending it against him now. I'm a bit perplexed by it, to be honest.
It's just WWE logic, isn't it? I mean, great chance to elevate
Twice.
both titles. And don't get me wrong, I think both guys have really brought in the mic. Maybe not speaking complete sense, but the promos have got the crowd drawn towards them. And, it's just really made it entertaining, as if these two guys really hate each other. Kevin Owens has said a lot of truths, what a lot of fans believe is correct. Super Cena mentions previously, stuff on the merchandise and all that. Stupid catchphrases. And it's like, as you said last week, it's like he's a heel, but he's telling the truth. So that makes you want to hate him. But regardless of if we think that the build-up's been good or bad and wacky titles in the line and whatnot, these two hopefully can match the first match, which could possibly be a bit of a struggle because it was so good. But it should still be a very, very good match.
If they cut down on the false finishes, it'll be a better match anyway, in my opinion. I just didn't like that aspect of it, but obviously it was still a great match. Just interested to see how they play it out, because I mean, the whole thing with Kevin Owens is he's been so dominant in NXT, and then he just has pretty much, it wasn't a normal Cena match, but it was the kind of Cena match that you had him against back in the day, the kind of match you'd had against Batista or somebody of that ilk who is going to physically dominate him, when clearly Cena's the stronger guy. But obviously that's the way they portray Cena's underdog. But I'm just interested to see how they go with it, especially considering I think it'll be pretty low on the card again, even though it should probably be your co-main event, let's say, using MMA terminology there. But it should be pretty high up in the card, otherwise it's going to just steal the show after about an hour.
That'll sell, actually, just as you mentioned it. It'll be interesting, the match placing, because you've got 3 high-stake matches. Or WWE wants to believe you've got 3 high-stake matches. You've got the Cena Owens, Money in the Bank, and your main event. One of them's probably got to open the show, and then you've only really got 2 lesser matches as filler, and that's it. So you're talking about matches are probably going to be first match, the 4th match, and the 6th match, unless there is only 6. No.
Well, obviously there's a pre-show match as well, but obviously that doesn't. But you just got to assume at the end they add something as well. Do they? This is the other thing that I don't understand why they don't have more tag teams involved anyway. When you've got a spot on the card, use your tag teams, and then you're getting at least 4 guys screen time as opposed to just 2 guys in a singles match. But again, this will be great. I think Kevin Owens wins again. Just don't see the point in them going 1 for 1, and then it's what do we have the rubber match at Battleground? Then have a 5-week build to that. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm assuming that they keep this feud going, but I think the only way it keeps going is by Kevin Owens winning, and him staying around even on Raw, just to be he's the guy that's presenting the reality to John Cena's illusion of what he represents and what all his sayings mean and all that. And I think that's the most conceivable way for them to go with it. Or they'll just do regular WWE and have John Cena win, and then have to go and have the other match. I don't really know. I prefer Kevin Owens to win, dominate against them, and then they can have a third match because it's John Cena, and that's what happens with John Cena.
I think even if Kevin Owens wins, it'll be a case of Cena wins. Sorry, I'm too used to saying Cena wins. Owens wins, sorry.
Lol.
And then Cena comes out and goes, "You beat me twice, but I never give up. And I'm going to rise above this hate, and I'm going to beat you in our 3rd match, like I did with Rusev, even though I beat him every time." And then just go with it that way. I think that's what they could go, and then we'll have 5 weeks of the whole, I'm not fit. I'll have the same as the Rusev one. I want a rematch. I'm not giving you a rematch, and have that again. It could be a recycle of that.
The interesting aspect of it for me is in the middle of the build. In fact, not even the middle of the build. It's it'll be 2 weeks out from Battleground. Kevin Owens will obviously have a title match against Finn Balor on this Japan show. So it's do they just hold off announcing a 3rd match between Owens and Cena, and then Owens loses the NXT title, and then that's when he fights for the US title? Is that maybe the way they're going with it? Or
I think pretty much how Cena's going to cost them, and Balor wins it at the Japan show, and then that's where they continue on, or they go for the title for there, in my opinion. Seems most logical in our sense, maybe not WWE logic.
But I mean, they've got like 30 writers. Somebody's bound to have brought that up at some point. But no, I think Owens anyway. He'll win it, and then we'll go for there. Aye.
I'm quite happy with that. Don't know if his price will be as good as it was the last time, but
definitely not. Moving on. I want to end on a positive note about WWE this week, so we'll talk about the Divas at this point. What the fuck's going on? Seriously?
I tweeted them all. I tweeted the Bellas saying, "Hi, are you heel or face this week?" Quite confused fan. And then I tweeted Summer Rae saying, "Are you heel or face this week?" I don't actually know. I was just so confused with this whole situation because the Bellas, I think it was Nikki, cut a very heelish promo. I'm like, all right, so you's heels again, but yous were just faces. And then Summer Rae comes out and I'm like, but you were a face that was with the Miz for no apparent reason, so you're a heel again. But are you facing it? I was just so confused. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on here.
It's aye. And then rounded out all this, you've just got Paige just like, I don't give a fuck anymore. That's what it seems like.
It's literally, I don't care, but this is my house now. That's literally all it is.
She's got a lot of houses with the looks at it.
I know.
But
it's just a cluster. No?
Dead air. That's the best response to it. Aye, there's just something not working. It's like they went, oh, Nikki Bella is brilliant, and then it's the thing we talked about last week. It seems quite obvious that they're probably going to keep a title on her until she beats AJ Lee's record reign, which is seems a bit pointless. You've got the whole thing, her sister just going there, oh, look at my sister, she's so good, and it's like you were fighting like 6 months ago. Paige is just dwindling in this whole feud. I mean, Naomi and Tamina have disappeared since the last event. Just confused by it all. I mean, how many females are on that roster, on the main roster? Like, you're probably up to double digits.
But don't get used.
And aren't on television ever. You can make this much more interesting in a number of ways, purely just by having two folk that can put on a good match. And I've just got this horrible feeling Nikki's going to keep the title again, and it'll be shit. It'll be some shitty way she'll win it or retain it even. Then you're left there with Paige just looking
twin magic again.
Totally redundant. Like, I don't know. Other than they go with shenanigans and have Paige pull twin magic with somebody that looks like her head under the ring, or I don't know.
I'm trying to think who it could possibly be. I'm like,
that's what they'll do. They're going to have Sasha Banks dressed as Paige hidden under the ring. That's what they're going to do. Because the referees are that blind. They'll no notice at all. I
was going to say they could have that Zara, the NXT diva, and then just hide all her tattoos for some reason. But it's just that probably makes more sense than anything WWE's going to come up with for this match.
Oh no, they'll just come up with Nikki wins. Lol. that's what it'll be.
And then they'll think, right, we need a challenger for Battleground. Who have we got that's credible and it's a face diva? Well, we don't actually know who's faces and heels. Paige, do you want to just do it? Okay. Again. Because this is my house now.
Do you know what? See, to be quite honest, see if Nikki wins through some heelish behaviour, cool. Give them a gimmick match at Battleground. Then it means we get a payoff to it, as opposed to just, oh, next person, your shot. Fine, do that instead. Have it be just interference or some shite way to finish the match because of Brie getting involved. And then they have to have a cage match, Divas cage match. Do it, just do it. Might as well get out of the road.
Divas TLC match, why not? Fuck it.
Divas, just come up with some new concept for Battleground. Like, I don't know, have them in I don't know. We've already had the strap match recently. Can I do that?
No disqualification. I'll have a poll. No disqualification. False count anywhere.
Pole on a pole match, and the person that reaches the pole gets to dance. No, I don't know. Honestly, we're getting a bit ridiculous here, but that's just how little care I think they're putting into it, and that's how little anybody watching cares about it. And I mean, I've not listened to it, but this week, Mick Foley was on Ric Flair's podcast, and apparently they just gushed for an hour about like, what was it they said? Women wrestling and women's wrestling, like, and even even gone to, I'd seen it posted on Twitter there, like ICW have got a podcast, and Red Lighting, who's the GM there now, talked to him, and like this got quoted saying that Hank's women's wrestling for the most part is pish or is shite, but it's true because that's the way WWE portray it. So that's what people worldwide are going to think it. And
yep, that's as you
such
say.
a shame.
It's everybody's perception. So like, if you've seen like, these are the main ones in the world, and they're absolutely awful. Like, this is just some sort of mad indie show. They're going to be absolutely terrible, and then you don't have any, you just have no interest. And even if these women are putting on the show of their life, and it ends up being a good match, you're still like, but was it really that good? Just because the standard's been set so low by the main company.
Aye. Talking to women on independence, somebody told me last week that Nikki Storm has X-Pac heat.
I seen that.
Fucking ridiculous. Anyway, moving on.
Did I have a chuckle with that as well?
Fucking people in this world, man. First of all, I don't know, I guess, right? I don't even believe that go away heat or X-Pac heat is a thing, right? It's not a thing anyway. If you're booing somebody, you're booing them. That's it to me. Don't fucking care. But to suggest that somebody like that, who's like probably one of the best female wrestlers, right? But then character-wise, one of the best like comedic heels. Brilliant. No, man, I just don't like her. She annoys me. Cool. She's meant to be annoying. That's the whole point.
Vicky Guerrero with me. She just annoyed me, but I'm like, she's just really good at what she done.
But then again, that's the folk you're trying to appeal to. So, anyway, moving on to brighter things, kinda. Tag division, getting a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2 tag match here. Primetime players facing the New Day, and they built this up in traditional means by a 1-on-1 match between Titus and Big E. Surprised that they've done that, having the two big guys go against each other. Thought they'd maybe changed it up. I'm assuming we'll get Dan Young and Xavier facing off on SmackDown. Just to balance it out, then probably Dan Young gets the win there, maybe keep it even get into the pay-per-view. I thought their match was alright for what it was. Just two big guys throwing each other about. Titus, I thought there was a cool bit with Titus where he throws Big E in the corner, and then it's like he goes to just go, and he's like, no, I need to get the crowd amped up here, and sort of like takes a pause in his movement to just turn back, and he's like, gets the crowd hyped up, and it's like, and it shows that he still isn't quite there yet, but he's still obviously got a thought process going through his match. He's trying to incorporate everything, and that's what you need to do, get everything over, is to incorporate it in your matches. Big E just always looks like a beast, even with a guy like Titus who's so much bigger than him. Made his finish look so easy to accomplish, picked him up like he was nothing. But again, this was just all about the outside, the work by Xavier Woods. Was it #Minister of Mass or something like that? Just all the jibes he's thrown at the crowd and all that. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And quite frankly, I'm just really excited to see these two square off in a match, and I hope that they don't just get the 7-minute treatment that the tag teams have got in the last couple of years, and we could probably get a really exciting match. Probably build to Titus with a hot tag or something like that, and I'm assuming they'll just retain through shenanigans. But I mean, it's such a drastic difference when you're down to just two teams competing for the title on the show, as opposed to the 6 teams we had just 2 weeks ago.
Obviously, there's a wee bit of disappointment that it's no Cesaro and Kid for obvious reasons, but I think great. It's an opportunity to showcase another tag team, get them some exposure on the bigger stage. The crowd are clearly behind Titus as well. I'd say Darren too, but more so Titus. I think he connects with them better. Just really intrigued to see how it goes down, because it depends again with the position in the card. If they put it before Money in the Bank or after, which could be a massive factor, because if Kofi's in a big spot and maybe they portray him getting injured or something or banged up, he's not going to be out there, and that puts it down to 2-on-2. So does that give the opportunity that, say, maybe Titus gets the win and Xavier Woods? It's unlikely, but
I don't think Kofi would be out there anyway, because his match is so important or whatever. And then again, do we get the New Day getting involved in the ladder match at some point? But no, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I'm totally cool. This is it's the thing that they've missed. Like, so they've built the primetime players up over the last month, maybe even longer, like just with the promos, and then actually being quite dominant in the Elimination Chamber. And then obviously they've looked alright in the build up to this match, but you don't think they can win. You know what I mean? Like, it was great last week. Titus looked impressive, despite them cutting off his momentum in the match. But this week was also them getting the win back. I'm assuming that something else will happen in SmackDown. But no, it should be a good match. I'm just really interested to see the dynamic with Big E and Woods in the ring as opposed to Big E and Kofi. Because, I mean, we've hardly ever seen him in the ring ever since he debuted. I mean, a couple of matches when he debuted, but since then, not at all. I mean, the Elimination Chamber was such an anomaly just to actually see him in there. And you're like, oh, he's actually got some cool spots. But, I mean, you never see them, so the crowd isn't into it. So it'll be good to see him get a chance on pay-per-view as well.
Well, even stuff with like the finish that Big E's obviously got with Kofi, are they going to replicate that, or is going to be something different with Xavier Woods? So it will be interesting to see how the chemistry is between him and Big E in this kind of match-up along the line.
It'll be great to see anyway. I'll talk about that later. Something else something's happening Tough Enough made me think of this as well, but I'll talk about that later. But I'm assuming New Day retain and continue to enlighten us with their hilarious promos and shenanigans every week.
I'll go for the shock upset. Primetime players get their first tag title run, and then it leads to a complaining New Day on Monday Night Raw.
And then get their rematch. Aye. I'm cool with that as well. Especially makes sense if Kofi isn't at ringside. But no, I thought that was alright for the show to cover all of that. I didn't like how they just announced like the other show, which is the other match was in the pre-show with Truth and Barrett, and it's like Barrett's not even on the show. Why is he on the pre-show then if he's not going to be on Raw? Just seemed a bit just thrown in there to have a match for the sake of having a match. And then what's happened to the Meta Powers? What's happened to Axelmania and Macho Mandow? What's happened to them? And
as you say there, what's happened to Bray Wyatt?
Aye,
here's a name that's just popped in my head as well. Where's Stardust? You know, it's crazy.
That's not even mentioning Jack Swagger, who's been missing for a couple of months now.
Mind Fandango had this mini feud.
It's such a mismanagement of their talent.
With Adam Rose, where's he?
NXT, apparently.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of guys we're missing out. As I say, Brad Maddox, when was the last time he was used? He's used maybe once in the last year. I mean, he thought he was very good in the mic. Absolutely crazy.
But no, anyway, I'm just assuming that Barrett beats Truth in the pre-show.
Wouldn't it surprise me if Truth wins, the way they've been booking Barrett, to be honest.
Who knows? Anyway, I'm looking forward to the show, to be quite honest. I think it'll be decent. I hope that something happens. We get some sort of a swerve. Something, I don't know. I'm expecting to be surprised. If it just goes the way, if it goes exactly as we've predicted, I'll be disappointed.
I'm going to get in with my usual no expectations. So if something does happen, be pleasantly surprised and go, that was okay. He shocked me there, WWE, but I do have a theory. It's going to be very predictable and very obvious. I hope it's been the way I've kind of said in this podcast with a couple of swerves and a couple of, I didn't expect him to win, or, it's a nice wee title change there.
Aye, that's really the best thing we can hope for. Just drop back to Raw a wee bit. What did you make of the performance of Byron Saxton as the third man on commentary as opposed to Booker T? The thing that I took from it was such a difference having a guy there that just dropped in like with a line occasionally about what was going on in the ring or what they were talking about storyline wise, as opposed to shoehorning catchphrases in, or just because Booker T's ridiculous on commentary. That's the best way to describe what he does in commentary, is just ridiculous.
Give you a surprise here. Obviously, I watched a little bit of SmackDown on last week. You know how much I do not rate Jerry the King Lawler as a commentator. But him, Tom Phillips, and Byron Saxton, perfect. It was absolutely a perfect mix of experience and youthful guys coming through. And it's obviously like King just maybe felt a bit more energy and a bit more invigorated by being these two guys that are still learning. But I thought it was...
Is Tom Phillips still doing play-by-play?
He was the main guy. Cool. He was the main guy for SmackDown.
Because that was the one fear I had when they changed the lineups, and because Tom Phillips had been doing play-by-play while Cole was like the babyface colour and JBL was the heel colour. And I enjoyed that because it meant then like it's obviously training up Tom Phillips to replace Michael Cole, and I think I'm totally cool with him. Some people like I listened to one of Tazzy's podcasts the other week, and he talked about the Byron Saxton incident on Raw where he'd commentate, and he was like, that's when people don't understand how hard this job is. I think he spoke about it a bit. He's like, but he couldn't quite tell if the whole thing was trying to sell the angle through the whole show, which I think part of it was, because Byron Saxton's more than capable of doing one-man commentary. Not to a great level in that, just he's more than capable. And he's obviously shown that in NXT and doing SmackDown commentary as well, then getting that shot on Raw. He's more than capable of being in that position. I think Tom Phillips is great as well, and putting him there with somebody like Jerry Lawler is only going to help him. I mean, say what you want about Jerry Lawler, and at the peak of his career, all he was doing was talking about tits. So, but he's always been great as that colour guy, regardless of what his role's been. But I like that dynamic as opposed to shoehorning somebody between JBL and Michael Cole.
Because I think when you've like Cole, JBL and Jerry the King all together, there's always going to be wee kind of inside jokes that only they really get. You weren't really getting that in SmackDown. I just felt that was making it a lot more enjoyable. It was just focusing more so on the product rather than going, oh my god, it's our Trizzle, as you'd get every show. You weren't getting that. And I just thought it made it a lot better for the wrestlers and just an all-round product.
Aye, I totally agree. That's something they need to get away from as well. I mean, initially I did like JBL as a heel commentator, but now it's like, it's so obvious that he's Vince McMahon's mouthpiece on commentary. Like, it comes across as so unnatural at times, and it's like, oh, some good guys he likes, most of them he doesn't like. Some bad guys he likes, most of them he doesn't like. So it's like,
let's see, when he first come back, and it was only kind of like a part-time thing and filling in. First 6 months, great. Then after that, just went dramatically downhill. But I suppose one thing we can take from all this is we can bitch and moan. There's a lot of good ones coming through. Phillips thinks is very good. Saxton's okay. I don't know what everybody's thoughts is on Renee Young. I'd need to listen to that a bit more to see how she calls it. But for what I hear in NXT, mini Michael Cole, Rich Brannon seems okay.
he's good.
Corey Graves seems really good, considering how short time he's been at it. So, I mean, it's all good.
That's saying Alex Riley was decent at it as well. So, I think that they're still the best thing, really. As I've always just liked that combination that WWE set up in that Attitude Era of play-by-play guy, former wrestler. Like, that really established that. Obviously, they'd done it for years. Bobby Heenan was there. Gorilla's obviously a former wrestler as well. But just that, like, strict play-by-play guy, wrestler, I like that, as opposed to having, because obviously Gorilla was a former wrestler as well, he was doing play-by-play. And then when it was Bobby Heenan, like, they had a great dynamic. Bobby Heenan was just such a unique character, though. I guess you could say the same about Jerry the King Lawler as well. But I like that dynamic, and obviously being that Attitude Era, being the peak of wrestling, that established that's what your announcers are meant to be like. But I understand why they've got the 3-man team, because it's a 3-hour broadcast. I just personally feel that they need to change up the whole presentation anyway, but they've got such a ridiculously hard job to do throughout a 3-hour show. I mean, we sometimes, like, fair enough, we end up talking for like 2 hours on this, but that's just us rambling. Having to talk for that amount of time, being directed the entire amount of time is got to be a struggle. And they do a great job, to be honest about it.
And obviously their script's going to be a lot bigger than ours, which isn't exactly massive. A lot is on the cuff, but no, that's just the way it is, I suppose. But I mean, I don't know. I just think the future's bright in that aspect. And I think if they change up a little bit more, don't give us the same thing every week. Like maybe, I don't know, 1 week have Tom Phillips do it instead of Michael Cole, just for that wee bit of difference and to give him that experience. Because most of all, if he is going to be doing it a long time, he is going to need experience. And maybe have a bit of an angle where Michael Cole's been hot again. Just like somebody's shoes hot or something.
Somebody's shoe?
I don't know. Like when he's a wrestling bit or whatever, they've went for a suplex and put it Michael Cole in the face or something. And Michael Cole's out for a week with something.
I just really enjoy when he sells something that hasn't happened to him. That's my favourite Michael Cole. Just falling off a chair. I love that. But no, the future is bright in that aspect, and also that's only great. The thing that worries me as well, though, is we're just so used to this setup. Like, this is, I'll just throw this out there, right? This is what I would prefer, right? football style, American football style, soccer style, the way they present their coverage, right, and it makes it more like a legitimate sport if you go this angle. Instead of having Michael Cole as your guy that's doing play-by-play, doing all your corporate shilling, and constantly updating you on the storylines as well, just have your commentary team as a play-by-play guy and a colour commentator. And see all the times where they cut to the commentary desk and have them talking. Why not have it like they do for the pay-per-views, and you've got people set up somewhere else to do that bit? I think that, I don't like the people they've got doing it, but I feel as if that's a better dynamic. I'd prefer cutting to a studio for 3 minutes and have them go, oh well, this was brought to you by Gatorade, blah blah blah. And studio we've got X person, right, and then they can talk for 90 seconds about something. I was like, right, and we'll take you back to the announce team, and then they get to the next segment, instead of having the commentators having to progress the storyline, having the commentators have to go, oh, WWE Network 999, blah blah. You do all that separately, and then when you get back to the commentators, they're just talking about the in-ring stuff, and that's, obviously they're talking about storylines, but it means they can talk about the storyline of that match, what the ramifications of that match are, as opposed to, well, we've got Ryback and Bray Wyatt in the ring, but let's talk about John Cena and Kevin Owens for the next 5 minutes. Like, it gets away from that, I think.
Do you know what this has reminded me? And this is why it made me laugh. Raw 1993-94, roughly. Todd Pettingill, WrestleMania report. It was literally like or even I think Mean Gene done some as well, but it was literally like a 2-3 minute thing was saying, oh, you'll see this on pay-per-view coming up, and it would highlight, we'll just go with the King of the Ring report, so it would highlight the brackets, and it would highlight why this guy's fighting this guy, and if any guy has any other issue with somebody else within the bracket, and it would highlight your main event and stuff like that. And that was just perfect, and that was only within I wouldn't even say an hour show, because you take away your adverts. That's not a 45-minute show, so there's no reason why they can't cut to that guy 3 times to maybe go over main event matches, or just say one on a main event and then maybe do another one where he cuts and it covers the IC title and the Divas title, and then just document it like that.
Exactly. I'd prefer that as opposed to having to have so much come through the commentary team, and also just freshens it up. I mean, on this Raw, I don't think there was any backstage interviews.
I don't remember.
I only watched it like 2 hours ago, right?
I know you've got me thinking.
So, I think there was anything backstage other than we're in a room talking, but there's a camera here, which is the most awkward looking thing that they do. But you're that used to it, you don't, like, if you show somebody watching it for the first time, they're like, are they supposed to know the camera's there, or, like, because it just looks so fake. But I mean, I'd prefer that aspect to it, and it means, but that's, again, maybe that's just a culture thing. Like, we're so used to, you watch the football, and it's like, 45 minutes of action, then back to the studio for 15 minutes. I'd prefer that than sitting watching it, because sometimes you get it, and it's like, whatever, if you get a feed of something in our country, and it's just the commentators will talk over the highlights during halftime or something like that. It's so much refreshing to take it to somebody else.
That just gave me a great idea. You have your 45 minutes of action, cut back to the studio. They have a pre-show studio for Scott Stanford and David Otunga. Why not cut back there for 15 minutes, digest what's just happened? We're going to head back to Michael Cole for more action. Something happens there, and then get back there. Make good, best use of that. I don't agree with the social media lounge. I mean, that's just a waste of time. I think they're trying to further storylines, but it's like stupid questions where it's just the heel always gets angry. I mean, look at Sheamus. What kind of questioning was that, fella? You know, that's literally all it was. It was just, you know what I mean? Sorry for the terrible accent.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that. That was all right.
You know, but that's what it kind of like is like. I mean, you've got all these things and avenues available to you. Use them. You know, that's if you want to kind of keep the fan in tune with every storyline rather than just, well, here's a replay of this, but it's the same monotone voice that's commentating in the matches. Cut it back to a studio, give it for a different angle. You know, they've definitely got the equipment there, the production there.
Exactly.
100%. I mean, I don't see why they don't use it more often.
It's not even like it needs to be 15 minutes or anything like that length of time. I just don't see why, like, and you wouldn't have it at the top of the hour either. It'd be like in the middle of the hour. That's where you'd have that segment. But it seems much more logical, where it just seems much more organised and much more professional than JoJo catching somebody backstage and amongst like stacks of chairs. Like, I mean, I just think that looks ridiculous. And as cliched as it is having them in front of the Raw sign and or a big screen and all that when they're talking to Renee Young, I prefer that environment. It looks more professional. It looks more organised. I prefer stuff like that. And it seems like it's much more realistic that you've arranged a time for somebody to be in the studio and they're only going to talk for a couple of minutes. And it's like, all right, so in the studio we've got Paige in the studio. But first, this segment's brought to you by Gatorade. Blah blah. More of this is available on WWE Network 999. Blah blah. Right, so of course, in the studio we've got Paige. You're involved in a feud with Nikki Bella. Blah blah blah. I mean, she's been quite dastardly the last couple of weeks. Twin Magic last week. So how do you feel going into the pay-per-view match? She's like, well, Tom Phillips, and then talks for 90 seconds, or just talks, gets a rebuttal, answers another question. So thanks for your time, Paige. Good luck for the pay-per-view. And back to Michael Cole and the guys in commentary. Like, that's so easy, and it's better than having the usual bullshitty, they three looking like pricks staring into the camera. Then having Michael Cole say something, and then JBL just disagree with him straight away while he's trying to progress a storyline. That's maybe just me. Anyway, that's enough WWE for this week, I think. Well, main roster anyway. Tough enough. They've got down to their final 40, right? And I wasn't planning on talking about this, but Adam O'Reiner, or the Big O, is through. And you've got to imagine, I've been in two minds with this. Is it because he's pals with Zack Ryder? Or is this WWE that doesn't use Zack Ryder? So why would they remember a guy that was on his show 3 years ago? And they've just picked him because he's physically impressive.
I think it's that. He's a meat.
But he's 5'10", you know what I mean? So like, or something like that. So I mean, because I remember him for what was his programme called?
Z True Long Island Stories.
I was thinking T there, and I was like, it's not T, it's Z True Long Island. Whatever it's called anyway.
Yeah, actually did it was Zack Ryder. It was on YouTube, and did a little segment with our man Tom Phillips there, just talking about the Big O. He's like, yeah man, I can't believe it. He's like, he's dealing with this guy that wins it, or he's going to be first out. He's like, he gives everything 110%, and then he just hit with Big O's catchphrase, and he's like, oh, Big O's awesome and all that. With all this stuff.
I like welcome to the ozone and all that. Like,
so
he's got catchphrases anyway. Obviously, that's WWE just changed his name straight away, or would they? They just have him something as his surname. But no, that was cool to see that. Then I didn't recognise anybody else. Like, I know there's like an MMA guy in there and stuff like that. But the one thing that did catch my eye, and they showed them on Raw this week, there's two black guys, twins or brothers, very close in age. But they look identical, just assuming they're twins, and looked physically impressive, obviously. And their surname's Kingdom, and I was like, that's cool as fuck. It's like Jeremiah and something else. That's another name that I couldn't pronounce. But Kingdom was like, that's cool.
What I also noticed is every woman, bar one, looked like it was there on looks alone.
Aye.
And body.
Well, a lot of them, that's what I noticed about a lot of the women were like gymnasts and stuff like that as well, so... or like were fitness models.
I suppose you can't really complain. I mean, that's like Charlotte initially was, you know what I mean? She's picked up great, so you can only think with the right amount of training, and if they get through, who knows?
Exactly. But no, it's always, and I like the whole the social media aspect of this year, and they started filming it today, and it's like they filmed it proper reality style, so like they've turned up and the cameras are on straight away. So I think there's a network special next week before it starts. So like a 1 hour special on the network, and then the show start on the 23rd of June. That's when you know someone's been drilled into. Not in that way. But no, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out on television.
Question is, are you going to tune in and watch it?
Not live or anything like that, but I'll probably catch it. I'm assuming that they'll have things to do with it on the network as well. They'll have network exclusives, and I think it'll be an hour long show anyway.
There'll be a lot in Raw as well.
Plugs and
highlights and that. I'll be honest, I didn't really have an interest to watch it, and I hadn't watched any of the previous ones. Then the Big O showed up, so I might have a wee look just to see how he gets on. As soon as he's eliminated, I'll be like, no thanks. So I didn't watch it the last time, as I said to you, when Stone Cold presented it, Big Andy in it. Didn't watch it.
I actually really enjoyed the last one. I didn't watch it live. when it was on television, but I did watch it afterwards. It's that way, like, it's reality television. I'm not the greatest fan of reality television, but it's wrestling, so just watch anything to do with wrestling. And moving on to more WWE related things is NXT, of course. And this week we have the in-ring debut of Samoa Joe in NXT. Just interested to see how that works out, to be honest, because he's also he's an impressive in-ring talent, so it'd be nice to see him competing in the WWE environment.
It'll be interesting to see if his style's been changed anyway, if there's any different things in his moveset, if anything's been taken out. That'll be interesting.
Exactly, just interesting to see how it goes, and you really hope that he succeeds anyway, just regardless. I mean, he's like 38 or something anyway, so if he's only going to be in NXT, that's cool, but if he's going to be on the main roster, you'd expect that to happen sooner rather than later. Also interested to see if he ends up being booked on this Japan show as well. Don't imagine he will be, but anything's possible. NXT's also going from strength to strength, debuting more folk every week as well. What I did notice in last week's show was, I thought it was quite funny, and they went to Sami Zayn, and he was talking about, like, cause in fact, was it Sami Zayn? Sami Zayn was just talking about, like, doesn't know how long about and all that. And it's like, alright, cool. So he's probably going to be back in NXT. And they did I was going to say Ken, they did a Hideo Itami piece as well. And he was like showing the Scarface surgery and all that. And then you've just got Hugo Knox just sitting in the background like, oh shit, am I meant to be in this? Just with like the ice therapy thing on his arm or whatever. Just like, so it was quite funny. But I mean, I think they made it quite obvious that Itami was meant to be like the main star of this Japan show. They've done quite well to fill it out, considering he's not going to be on it. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of role he plays while he's there, because they're still driving the storyline of Kevin Owens being involved with him being injured. So it'll be interesting to see if they do anything with that.
Could be him that helps Balor win the title in Japan.
Or costs Balor.
Oh, could lead to some tension, that's it.
But I think that'll be interesting to see how that pans out even. Surely I've got to talk about wrestling wise, to be honest.
I've added a small thing then. Obviously, you've got the potential tryouts at the WWE, the speculated names. Is there any there that stands out to you you'd like to see in WWE?
I've not even read up who's meant to be there for tryouts.
I'll give you some names.
I saw a picture, but I was like, I don't know him there.
Chuck Taylor was one. Biff Buzik or something.
He's alright.
Trying for the male side of things. Johnny Gargano was one. God, we don't have the forums up, it's hard to remember. From the female side, Taylor Hendricks that was in TNA, Havoc that was in TNA, although there was all those rumours of those racism tweets from 2011-12, which some wrestling site decided to bring up. I'm like, it was 4 years ago. I'd get it's wrong, but it's 4 years ago. Athena was one. Apart from that, it's just more kind of your people who know people. I think it's like somebody that was in rehab with Darren Young, female, and just other models and whatnot.
I'm cool with that. Nobody really in there would be that bothered with. Nobody I think could make a massive impact, or because that's the thing as well. You're like, oh, I'd like to see that person in WWE, and it's like, but would you? Like, are they going to be utilised in a way that it'd be worth them being there? I mean, I'll be honest, until it's considering until it's concerning people like Adam Cole, who sort of dropped off a wee bit, like since the WWE rumours, like about 8 months ago. Before that was when it first came up, like, oh, his contract expiring in 6 months. Seems like he's going to WWE, and it's like, well, he signed a new deal to bring you on, or seems that's where he's staying for the foreseeable. Unless it's a name like that, like a Kenny Omega or somebody like that, somebody that's really, really impressive, then I wouldn't really be too bothered. Or unless it was some UK talent getting taken over. But other than that, just wait and see how it plays out. Obviously, they've had quite a few anomalies with, like, Uha Nation. Obviously, you're like, well, this guy's going to be dynamite in WWE. He's got everything there, and they've put his name on they've put his face on television so soon after signing that they obviously see there's a massive amount of potential there as well. But it's always still cool to see who's had a tryout and things like that. Because also we know, well, I personally know, having spoken to some folk, like WWE comes to Britain, it's like so many people are there, like just as, like obviously it's, the big thing's been there as Rosebuds for their live events or on Raw, but obviously they're the whole time having tryouts, and obviously because that's at the end of the day that's what everybody's covering, is to get a shot in WWE, or even more so these days to get a shot in NXT. But then again, taking that to the British wrestling scene, the wrestling scene's thriving here in Britain.
Oh, yep, 100%.
I mean, was it yesterday? I was just on Ticketmaster and just looking up for tickets for a gig or whatever, and also I'm subscribed to ICW and Ticketmaster, so all the ticket details come up there, and it's like oh, ICW recently added these events, and it's like recently added like 8 events over the next couple of months, like that are nearby, and you're like, that's massive. That's really massive. Then you've got like Progress Down South, always getting great reviews, great things coming out of there. They've got this weekend. They'll be doing their sort of a showcase thing at Download Festival. You've got there's that Target Wrestling. I think that's Carlisle. They're on that My Channel on Sky or whatever. So I mean, that's obviously great. But then on top of that, you've still got like 5 or 6 companies that are even just in Scotland running regularly or semi-regularly, doing great shows. Like PBW done their best ever crowd in Dumbarton, right? That's just a wee thing, but like you're drawing nearly 500 people in Dumbarton for a show on. I don't even think it was on it might have been on like a Saturday night or a Friday night or something like that. And that's still a big deal, getting 500 people in a venue on a Friday or a Saturday night, regardless of who you are, regardless of if it's wrestling, if it's bands, if it's like just a theatre, getting 500 people anywhere on a Saturday night, that's massive. Now it'll turn out it was on a Thursday or something, I don't know.
No, but the thing is, it's great having all these crowds, but it's showcasing that even in these shows, even though it is like in a lesser venue, sometimes the talent is far better, and the show you're seeing is far more the value for money. I mean, the amount of times this example went to SWA, and we've paid their ticket price compared to the WWE show, and it's like, for what we paid for SWA, we've practically robbed them compared to WWE, because the talent in the show they put on is so good and sometimes better than a WWE show.
And that's the thing as well. It's always with these companies as well. It's trying to find the balance between how much fans are willing to pay to how much the show is worth. Because I'll be quite honest, like I'm usually skint anyway, but these shows are like the perfect thing for me because they're cheaper than the FITBA is. And that's like the one thing that I'm always going to go to every week. So they're undercutting the FITBA, great. And they're putting on a better show than the FITBA does 9 times out of 10. So I mean, that's great for just the casual punter. Obviously, I'm not a casual punter. But it's when they do things like that, like SWA is obviously most local to us. They draw like up to 800 people within that range at their big show twice a year in Motherwell. Now they've expanded that, they're doing a big show in Paisley as well. It seems to be drawn quite well. And it's looking at it for both sides. It's not being a stickler like the kind of person that says, oh, the ratings were bad, so the talent was bad. Like, the talent's great, and it has been great for a long time, and the crowds are picking up because of that. That's a total subsequence of that. Obviously, I think it's, if you know anything about the wrestling scene in Scotland particularly, and even Britain as a whole, it's been terrible for a long time. It seems to have been just hearing people talk, a big issue was, it was like the old timers. The old timers were like so used to doing things their way, and then they'd be promoting shows or running shows, and it's like you've got some big massive out of shape guy that's just because he's running that show, he'll be going over somebody anyway, regardless of whoever it is, and it seems like a very antiquated way. Antiquated, that's the word. Seems like a very antiquated way to run things, and that's what happened. Like, I don't really know much about how things happen with SW here. Like, the guy that was running SW basically just like, he's like, I'm done, he's out. Which left guys like Big Demo in positions, like they're involved. So it's like, they need to take over this, they need to run this, or it's dead. And I mean, at that point, SW was probably like the 3rd or 4th longest running company in Britain at the time that was still active. So guys like that, and that's a guy like he's obviously had WWE tryouts as well. He spoke about that. Obviously they run the Source Wrestling School, so they've helped people get tryouts. I mean, that's a massive thing, and the talent that comes out of that school's brilliant as well. So guys like that are, and that's the thing, without guys like that are going to invest their time to improve the scene, then it's not going to happen. And I think that's why British wrestling did stagnate, because it was all guys that weren't willing to help other people. They only wanted to help themselves to make money for themselves.
They were really just putting in but not giving back.
Exactly. That's why obviously the scene's got to the place where it was. Like, and you hear the ICW story, like Mark Dallas was just a guy that wanted to run a wrestling show. So went to wrestling school because they thought that's what he had to do, and that's how then he meets wrestlers, and then he meets obviously promoters and learns the basics of running a show, runs a show, probably doesn't really have a clue what he's doing, and then eventually after a few years gets Jack Jester on the phone, and Jack Jester gets him to run another show, and they go strength to strength to now they're the biggest promotion in the country, probably up there with WXW in Germany is the biggest in Europe. So I mean, it's just amazing how things like this happen in like a short 5-year span, how things turn around so drastically. And I mean, that's the thing, I'd love to speak to somebody like John the Bomb or that about how it's turned around so drastically from, I would just laugh at all these posters, like you'd laugh at the posters put up in Motherwell, there's local wrestling, because you're that used to it being the shite shows with a fake Undertaker, the guy that's like 5'9" portraying Undertaker, and to the stage where it's at now where it's like you're telling folk to go and then they're like, nah, wrestling shit, man, and you go and they're like, that was brilliant, I'll be going again, and they go again. It's insane that the turnaround in it. It really is. And if that way, if I wasn't, I'd say I probably like wrestling more than I like football these days. But
I'm kind of getting that way myself a wee bit.
But that's just because. But then it's this because wrestling's just on the up in this country, and football's in the way down, if we're quite honest. But if I wasn't committed to going to the football every week, I'd probably be going to a wrestling show every week instead. And then there's the weekends where I still get to go to a wrestling show, and that might only be 5 weekends out of a year, or 6 weekends out of a year. But that's better than it was 2 years ago when it was no weekends out of a year.
A lot of this when you just talk about promoting and stuff like that, like when we were at the last show and you had one of the folk, it was just wee wins, and it was their dad turned around and said, do you know I'm doing this show? And like you want to try and explain to them, but you kind of want them and say, just watch, because when you see this guy, you're going to know who his name is by the time this show finishes. And I'm pretty sure by the end of that show in SWA, they know who Joe Coffey was, they know who Mark Coffey was, and a couple
of thing, that's like you're saying the guy's turning, you're like, well, the Waynes are like Robbie Solar because he wears a mask, but they're like everybody else anyway because they're all really impressive, they're all really good at what they do. And then you're like, I know, they're like Joe Coffey, paints his face, and like, but they like the wrestling. Like if they watch the wrestling on the telly, they'll like that. You know what I mean? It's like it's quite funny. I was out shopping yesterday, and just walking about shopping, had my headphones in, being quite ignorant. And I bumped into a wee guy bumped into me actually. And I was like, oh, where are you going? It's like, I turned around and looked, and the wee guy had John Cena wristbands on. And I was like, oh, what? And then he was like, oh, sorry. And I was like, it's all right, bud. And I was like, you can't see me. And he just buckled. And I was like, so funny, just like, and you forget that sometimes that's the demographic of wrestling on the telly. And it's just trying to get that crossover. Like, I think we were kind of that mentality, like, oh, it's WWE or nothing else. And then you find other stuff. You find New Japan, you find a bit of Ring of Honor or whatever, and you're like, oh, there's other stuff. And then, like we did a couple of years, like, oh, there's a show in Motherwell. Oh, it's going to involve a Royal Rumble type match. Nah, we'll just go to it anyway. And you're like, this is fucking amazing. Why have we been ignoring this?
That was literally the reaction. It's like, why have we not heard of this sooner? Why this? Like, I went in and I'm like, this is gonna be garbage. I'm like, it's wrestling, but I'll go and see. And I watched the first match. I'm like, who are these guys? In fact, I think one was Jackie Paul. This guy just looks like Mr. Perfect. What even is this? After the show, oh my god, this Jackie Paul guy is so good.
That's just it's one of the things. It's just
amazing.
But again, that's just the kind of uptake. Like, and that's what it takes is like, and it's the kind of thing like we spoke about last week with Mick Foley, in ICW. It's like he'll bring people in, he'll bring new eyes, but it's ICW that will keep them there because it's such a great product that they put on. I think that's the case for most of the companies across Scotland, and even across the UK to an extent, because there's that much talent across the UK that you've got to imagine even the worst show is going to have at least one person on it that's a really good talent and will engage the crowd. That's the very least you're looking for, is somebody that will engage the crowd. Because I think that's the other thing as well. We've got such a great amount of talented wrestlers, but we've got such a great number of performers on top of that. Guys who aren't the best in the ring, are probably distinctly average, but can engage the crowd so well that their in-ring talent is irrelevant. And then on the other hand, you've got guys that are so talented in the ring that their charisma is irrelevant because their wrestling engages you. So it's great to have that balance as well. And actually, see, when you talk about WWE, that's what WWE's missing, because of the Performance Centre and NXT and their prototype, everybody's too similar. And that's why you need like a guy that just wrestles and doesn't need to talk, and his wrestling does the talking for him.
Well, that's like the last SWA show we went to. You obviously get different styles. Like the opening match was like your kind of high flyers, solar,
Crash and burn match.
Yep. Flying Ryan Griffin, I think he's the name there. Bliss Govan, etc. Then you had like your heavyweights, you could say brawlers, but to an extent technicians, with Joe and Damo. And then you had just something completely different, and Tommy End, just so different to anything else you had in that show. It was just such a difference.
Well, but that's the thing, you've got Tommy End, who's like a guy that he's for Hollands, he's definitely been a kickboxer at some point. Him against Michael Whitlash, who I think's like he's the prototype of a wrestling villain to me. So, and that again, it's just brilliant, but then again, we're spoiled for the amount of talent we get in the shows here as well.
It's such a wealth of talent, and it's like they're all so good, and like so many different styles. It's great.
It's brilliant. It definitely looks bright going forward, and obviously the more shows you can get to, the better. But and again, it's one of the things, like, because you hear so much about even the smaller companies in America, like there's millions of interviews with all these guys, and you very rarely get to hear what the people from like this scene get to say. And when you've got somebody like ICW like regularly getting, say regularly, they're getting like up to 1,000 people at shows, like 4 or 5 times a year probably now. Going forward, obviously look to expand that. So I mean, there's a massive amount of people there that want to hear from the talent beyond the storylines, because that's what engages people. That's ICW have got their own demand, and they're doing like, well, the shoot interview thing isn't really shoot interviews, really. It's more just to promote the storylines. But then they've got like their thing with Joe Coffey. Don't think you'll have seen it. It's just like a sit down interview piece. And it was the build up to the Barrowlands show. Now that was really well done. You get to hear about him, and that's great for a guy that you don't really get to hear from. All you see is this guy that's massive and comes out and beating his chest, swings grown men round about. And you're like, but to hear for that guy out with the wrestling context is so interesting.
It brings you closer to that character and makes you want to connect more with that character and makes you want him to succeed more.
Especially when all these guys are themselves turned up to 11. Then that's what makes it more interesting. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, you go on any wrestling news page or anything like that, and most of it isn't even about the actual storylines. It's about the backstage stuff, or it's about the people themselves. And I think that's what people are interested in hearing about. And that's maybe something that's missing from here. I mean, fair enough, you still get like there's a couple of sites that have like that'll do interviews with guys, but they're very, very short, and it's not really. It's like I prefer to hear somebody talk as opposed to answering questions. You know what I mean? Like, it's better to have. So, how did you get into wrestling? And then they explain it, and they can expand upon it, and then that leads you down other paths as opposed to having 20 questions lined up, which is fine. But you actually like to hear somebody, because that's the other thing as well. That their natural charisma, if they've got any, will come through there, and then just the way they speak, and obviously more so because we're Scottish, so we'll be right into it because it's Scottish people talking. But again, how much of Ring of Honor or just the American independent scene is obviously a lot of their matches go beyond the boundaries of America. But I'd say for every Ring of Honor match I've watched, I've probably watched the two guys in the match. I've watched interviews with them like at least 3 or 4 times more like per length of the match. So I've seen these two guys having a 12-minute match. I've probably watched half an hour's worth of interviews with them. Just because, they're cool guys, wonder what they're into, wonder what they're all about. So that's the other thing that a lot of these companies maybe need to explore. But then again, it's very, very expensive to invest in that kind of thing. Not just money-wise, but time. I think that's what a lot of people realise as well. Especially when you see the quality stuff that Ring of Honor comes away, and it's no great at all.
I don't know if you could kind of compare it, but around about WrestleMania time, obviously you had the Fergal Devitt documentary, and you had all the stuff with the interviews at WrestleMania season. Like, I had to listen to them and watch all of them just really to learn more about them. Because, like, you could say with like ICW, New Japan, you never really knew much about him. It was more so just this is this Irish guy that is a hell of a talent and could that obviously like I want to know what's the inspiration for the paint and why these characters and all that. And I felt you didn't really know that until you seen the documentary, you seen his journey, and then you seen obviously the small things at WrestleMania when he was talking to the likes. I can't even put names who it was, but Rosenberg and other people like that.
That's the thing for me as well. Obviously, this isn't really, that's not something you would target towards like casual fans, and that's a big thing with all these companies. They're targeting the casual fans as well. But somebody like ICW is obviously, they're targeting casual fans, of course, but it comes across they've got a real drive to have a hardcore fan base as big as possible, and that's what everybody wants. And that's the thing, I can't remember who penned this article, or it was just a piece that was written, and basically in any line of work, if you can have 1,000 people committed to what you do, you can make a living off of it. So if ICW are running shows that are constantly attracting 1,000 people, people can make a living off of that. But obviously, they would love to be bigger than that. Banksy, if that's the baseline that you're working to, that's absolutely brilliant. And obviously, I think they're pretty close to it, especially with the way they've expanded down south. I don't really see there being much room for the other companies up here to expand like that. But if they can get to a point where their biggest show of the year is drawing 1,200 people, like is it WrestleZone in Aberdeen, I think, like they do, or I don't know they're based in Aberdeen, but I think it's WrestleZone does a show up in Aberdeen in one of their ballrooms, and that's like that amount of people, and that's brilliant. Like they sold it out 2 years in a row or whatever, and that's great. That's what you need to be aiming for. But the fact that companies like that are doing that across Scotland is massive. Obviously, in the UK, the scene seems to be quite vibrant as well. But I'm just hoping to get to more shows as well, especially now it's hitting the summer. ICW have got their run in Edinburgh, so hopefully get along to some of these shows, because there's no FITBA, so that's like £25 a weekend to spare, so not including drink obviously, because you'll drink the same.
I mean, it's a good position now, but it makes you think what a position it could be in if somebody got a TV deal. Like, it could take it to a whole new level, in my opinion. Not just ICW, but other companies. I think it would have a great knock-on effect. Obviously, I don't personally know how close it is to a TV deal, or if it looks like it's going to be possible, but I just think if it could get a TV deal, it could do wonders for the industry within the UK.
Well, that's the thing, that obviously Insane Fight Club 1 and 2 documentaries they had on BBC, like, drew massive numbers, like, drew like 1 million, sound like one of these fucking ridiculous Americans, but like 1 million people watched the first one, like on the first show or something like that. I think it was 1 million or close to 1 million at 10:30 at night or something like that. That's amazing. And going to the show subsequently, it's very clear that they've attracted an audience because of that. I mean, in Grado alone, the story that they told with Grado on that Insane Fight Club documentary will have attracted a massive amount of people as well. just because that was such a compelling story with that guy, and he's such a compelling person to watch. And then obviously a brilliant story with Jack Jester on that as well, and a brilliant story with Mark Dallas. But I think above all, it was like Grado drew people in, and then they see, oh wait, this actually is quite on my street, like, and it re-engages people, because there must be a massive number of people left over from the Attitude Era when wrestling was at its most popular, and worldwide, and it was obviously very popular in Britain as well, because that was like the peak of the peak of Sky, but it was really the peak of fake cable boxes. So a lot of people would have watched it then as well, and it's always just try to get those people back into it. But I think all these companies are doing a massive job at doing a really good job of it, and it is a massive job. But if you've got a company like ICW that's trying to attract older people, then there's plenty of room for like SWA, PBW, companies like that to attract the younger audience as well, who it's what WWE is aiming at. So there's plenty of them around to be bringing into your shows. Before we ramble anymore, looks bright for the local scene here, and I think there's going to be a point where we'll start losing some of them to WWE. You've got to imagine so, and I think it'll be a very bittersweet day when that does happen.
It's one of the ones. It's like, I don't want to go kill Mishy, but I'd really love to see some of them get that opportunity, and get that exposure. Like some of them really do deserve it.
Definitely.
And some of them are certainly talented enough to do it.
Anyway, that's all for this week. Unless you've got any other comments to add about anything.
Just don't disappoint us, WWE, this week. Get Money in the Bank, and I'll be happy.
If we had no expectations, how can you be disappointed?
They can still disappoint with no expectations. Trust me, we should know that by now.
Anyway, that's all for this week. As usual, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at 1 Hour Broadway, catch us on Stitcher and iTunes under 1 Hour Broadway as well. Give us a little subscribe, and the episode will be dropped to you as and when it's delivered on a Wednesday, whatever time that may be. Again, if you like just old-fashioned download, you can get it over at 1 Hour Broadway TK, because I'm not going to invest money in .com at this point. So that'll be available to you. That's probably up there earlier. That'll be up there early on a Wednesday morning. And that's all for this week. Tune in next week and we'll discuss the fallout of not Payback but Money in the Bank, and hopefully have something big to discuss. And I'm assuming Brock Lesnar's back next week. If not, we'll be massively disappointed.
Of course, obviously, we'll see if there's any hype towards the show to Japan, or if they're just going to make that a random show for the network as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure we'll hear more about Tough Enough. Something to discuss. Anyway, thanks for listening. And sayonara.